All right, now moving on with a very important report for tonight. SACCO's vindicated. The Cameroonian government rejected the announcement by Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, which had been released by her office on Friday, apparently with the approval of all parties to the conflict. La République du Cameroon's communique states that it has not entrusted any foreign country or external entity within a role of mediator or facilitator to settle the crisis in what La République du Cameroon still refers to as the Northwest and Southwest regions, said the statement issued by the colonial La République du Cameroon's communications minister, René Emmanuel Sadi. It is first and foremost up to the Cameroonian people, to the institutions and leaders, that they have freely chosen to see appropriate ways and means to address problems facing our country, the statement said, meaning that there is something wrong with the Canadian Foreign Office.
Well, on Friday, in her announcement, Ms. Joly said that the Cameroonian government was among the parties that had agreed to a formal peace process with Canadian mediation. Canada has accepted to mandate to facilitate this process, she said in the announcement. Who now is a liar here? Who took the initiative in the first place? Now, over the past 3 days, she also repeatedly tweeted positive reaction to the Canadian announcement. It was unclear why exactly the Cameroonian government had backed out of the agreement.
Now, on Monday evening, Ms. Joly's press secretary, Adrienne Blancard, said, "We're in touch with the parties and our previous statements still stand. Representatives of Cameroon's government had attended all of the earlier meetings in Canada that led to the agreement," he said. From this premise, all those who doubted the foresightedness of the President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, Dr. Samuel Ikome Sacco, denying being part of the Canadian charade, calling it another Fumban, can now see where we are today.
Well, the Canadian announcement on Friday, which followed a series of secret meetings with Cameroonian delegation in 3 Quebec and Ontario locations over the past 4 months, had sparked widespread optimism from many Cameroonians, including Ambazonian leaders. While only sellouts, unionists, federalists, traitors, and merchants use the Canadian so-called secret meetings for self-aggrandizement and not for the interests of bona fide Ambazonians under the People's Interim government. It was also welcomed by senior British and U.S. diplomats and even by Pope Francis, who praised the agreement during a Sunday address.
Well, according to Chris Roberts, it is still a major stumbling block towards peace in Cameroon. Chris Roberts, a University of Calgary scholar and Africa specialist who has worked on Cameroon issues, had this to say. He says, "I assume Canadian officials and others in the international community were prepared for this denial, given the regime's track record," he told the Globe. "Now the real diplomacy begins. Ask all these people why the Swiss-led process was later ignored. Bonafide Ambazonians see Canada as mere delay tactics, while the kith and kin are mercilessly killed on a daily basis at home front by the genocidal La République du Cameroun."
Well, last September, the colonial La République du Cameroun government had pulled out of a Swiss-mediated peace process that had begun in 2019. The colonial La République du Cameroun government is led by long-ruling 89-year-old Paul Biya, the oldest head of state in the world, who has dominated the country for the past 41 years. Cameroonian human rights lawyer Agbo Ngoro, who has documented atrocities in the conflict, urged all sides to remain calm after the government's reversal. "The forces of evil can never triumph," he said on Twitter Monday. Now, let us keep hope alive. Courtesy Associated Press edited for Undaunted. All right, now we have this testimony from a fan. You know, there is so much more to learn from him, and this goes a long way to show that ABC Amber TV is the most reliable TV for you to learn something from. Now, let's get this testimony.
Hello, ABC. We are grateful for you guys. You guys are doing a marvelous work for us over there. We are very proud of you. At times when we see, when we listen, when we look at the TV, now we are fine. The images are here 100 on 100. So we are very grateful for the work you people are doing over there. We are hoping on you. All the Ambazonians, they are hoping on you. And they know that you people are doing the right thing. May God bless you. We are very grateful. God is our guide. We will reach our destination. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chill. And right about now, we'll bring you the editorial. Well, a lot is going on concerning the Canada process, and we have a lot of things to talk about too. Remember, we have Dr. Mungwa on the other side waiting to come on. But let's have this editorial, and right after that, we'll bring Dr. Mungwa.
In our editorial today, we look at Diplomacy Masterclass Made Simple Part 3, the Canadian offer, Dark Clouds and Silver Lining by Bridget Moyang Fielding. Our introduction says she got up this morning, January 21st, 2023, to a communique on the website of the Canadian Government Foreign Office, in which the Honorable Melanie Joly, Minister, announced that Canada has accepted to facilitate a peace process aimed at resolving the ongoing crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, as they call it. Whereas this is good news after the collapse of the Swiss-led process, the Canadian offer rather leaves a sour diplomatic taste in its wake. In Diplomacy Masterclass Made Simple Part 1, she did explain that the most urgent and important thing in conflict management is getting the belligerent to agree to a mediated conflict resolution process, and particularly getting the powerful aggressor belligerent party to agree to negotiate. That is why the Canadian announcement should have been greeted with jubilations, but like she said, this offer leaves a lot to be desired. We will in this paper examine the context of the offer, pointing out the enormous weaknesses inherent in the offer while highlighting the little window of hope the silver lining therein built. First of all, it is important that we lay to rest misgivings surrounding the use of some terms and designation. 1. Peace process. Wikipedia defines a peace process as a set of social-political negotiations, agreements, and actions that aim to solve a specific armed conflict. Peace is the sublime endpoint of every credible conflict resolution process that addresses root causes and establishes justice after the truths in the matter have been fully established and considered. For this sublime endpoint to be achieved, the facilitator must make sure that all parties and factions or parties come to the table, and more importantly, that the principal faction is part of the process. Failing this, its effort will be in futility. The designation of the territory of the southern Cameroon's Amazonia as the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon may seem obnoxiously annoying to Amazonians, but that is what it will be until statehood recognition and independence restoration are achieved. Capitol Hill and Westminster Abbey may easily refer to the territory as the former British Southern Cameroons, lawmakers or politicians and activists who were not bound by the tenets of diplomacy and diplomatic speak. But number 10 Downing Street and 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue will hardly in their communications refer to the territory at the moment as Amazonia. Doing so will mean recognition before the outcome of a peace process. That would be diplomatic clumsiness. Though subtitled Diplomacy Masterclass Made Simple, the subject of this paper is indeed hard, diplomacy at the summit of its complexity. We shall unusually start by laying out the pitfalls in the Canadian offer and end with the beacon of hope in the offer. Until negotiation starts, it remains an offer and not a process. For now, all parties, including the principal on the Amazonian side, have not subscribed to it. For all we know, Yaoundé is observing to see the reactions of Amazonians' movement and stakeholders to world peace. Now, the ominous dark cloud. Whereas conflict resolution opportunities like this one should be grabbed at the first opportunity, the Canadian offer comes with an uncomfortable peculiarity. Canada was the financier of the earlier Swiss offer, which made her a direct partner in the process. It would have been interesting for Canada to inform the international community why she accepted to facilitate a peace process in the same conflict. What changed? It is principle in international relations, and Canada is duty-bound to do everything to make sure that her process gains credibility with all parties, including the international community. It will be most helpful if the Canadian offer receives the same avalanche of support that the former had. It will be of great help if Canada starts by informing us why La République du Cameroun pulled out of the Swiss offer in the first place and ran to Ottawa. From where I stand, that is where Bridget Moyang-Fielding stands. The reason why Yaoundé favors Canada against Switzerland is obvious. The Canadian government, through its High Commission in Yaoundé, has since the Grand National Dialogue invested thousands of dollars towards helping Yaoundé ram the outcome of the charade down the throats of Ambazonians. Another Canada-sponsored workshop in partnership with Cameroon's Ministries of Territorial Administration and Decentralization is scheduled for February 1st to 3rd, aiming at selling the virtues of decentralizations and the special status to the lay Ambazonian. This apparent double standard does not augur well for the Canadian offer and the credibility and confidence the yet-to-start process very badly needs. While transparency, it will be good that the Canadian government defines and is transparent on the scope of its mandate. This is a must after the Swiss-led process. Does the offer seek to examine the root causes of the conflict, and without preconditions, will all options be on the table, as demanded by the United Nations and other international stakeholders to world peace? Canada should make sure that all the reservations expressed against the Swiss process by the same people Yaoundé prefers are addressed to the letter to avoid another collapse. Opponents of the Swiss-led process, now gathered around the Canadian offer, decried a certain absence of transparency. The Canadian offer should do better so far. Its communications is shrouded. What makes the Canadian offer more suspicious is the fact that Ottawa's communication bears a strip of arrogance. It sounds like Canada is ready to get into talks without the Ambazonian principle, whereas Canada is well informed as to the strengths of all the groups claiming to be stakeholders in the Ambazonian conflict on the Ambazonian side. Is it that Canada did not do due process? That would be amateurish. It is not surprising seeing that Canada is not reputed in the domain. Canada, like Switzerland, should go all out to court and woe the Amazonian interim government and other skeptical movements and stakeholders. The use of interim government in the document without specifying the faction lends credence to the present suspicion and fears, as it is common knowledge that Yaoundé has been trying to manufacture its own Ambazonian leaders to negotiate with. It is well known that the group presented during the direct talks about talks in Canada was the interim government care of Sissoko Julius Ayuk Tabe. The difference is quite clear. Using the name interim government in place of interim government care regency is rather dishonest. Announcing her intentions amidst such dishonesty and controversies does not augur well for the much-needed credibility and confidence the offer needs to build. Rather, it erodes Canada's standing and reputation as a neutral third party and peace process facilitator. Much work has to be done to repair the damage. On Thursday, we'll continue with further reservations on the Canadian offer. But for now, we've come to the end of our editorial for tonight. If you want more articles like this, kindly visit our website at www.abcambertv.com for more. Subscribe, become a club member, and a part of the winning strategy. Find out payment details on your screen. I am Star Smart reporting for Undaunted ABC Amber TV.
All right, thank you so much, Star Smart, for that report. Well, I'm sure that you all know the reason why we are here, right? The State of the Liberation Movement with Secretary Martin Mungwa, PhD, F.Asce. Well, he's been right here in the studio at the other end, and we need to connect to him right about now. We need to hand over the mic to him as he gives us the interim government's position and force. All right, Dr. Mungwa, good evening.
Good day, Ambazonians, and Happy New Year. I'm glad to start today's discussion on the Canadian offer for peace in Cameroon. Good day, everyone. So today's topic is the interim government's position statement issued on Canada's facilitator role in resolving the conflict between Amazonia and La République du Cameroon. Dear Ambazonians and members of the international community, we recognize and encourage participation by international stakeholders to resolve the sovereignty conflict in the failed Cameroon Federation. Our failed federation was the outcome of an experiment by the United Nations vote of 21st of April 1961 to establish an Anglo-Franco-federal country in West Central Africa. The federation failed between 1972 and 1984. The larger French-speaking federal state under France by treaties sought to annex the smaller English-speaking federal state, better known as Amazonia today, through manipulative measures and blistering violence. The result has been devastating sociopolitically, economically, developmentally, and infringed the people's rights of this former UN Trust territory before the declaration of war by La République du Cameroon on or in 2017 to defeat the people of Amazonia militarily. Our people put up a fierce fight to defend themselves, inform international organizations, and have not ventured into the territory of French Cameroon. The interim government salutes the Amazonian Restoration Forces and orders all men and women to stay alert, do all to keep our state terrorists from La République du Cameroon out of built up and rural areas. No one should underestimate the danger posed by La République du Cameroon state terrorists to people, property, crops, and domestic animals. The annexation project came directly out of the presidency of La République du Cameroon, aided and abetted by France. Both parties motivated by a fundamental lust for petroleum and blood from the Amazonian maritime border with Nigeria. A World Bank report by two Canadians in 2011 shows how the proceeds of petroleum sales are evenly split 50-50 between La République du Cameroon and France. Effective December 26, 1959, La République du Cameroon practically ceded her sovereignty to France in a treaty. France has for over 62 years taken away over 50% of the foreign earnings of La République du Cameroon, including earnings due to exports from Amazonia and an illegitimate program, Christian Monetary Corporation. That is one key root cause of the Amazonian War of Independence 2017 to date. La République du Cameroon has no maritime border whatsoever with the Nigerian Federation. We welcome the announcement by the Honorable Foreign Minister of Canada, Madame Melanie Joly, to facilitate discussions in enabling processes that lead to a mediated solution compliant with requisites of the United States Senate Resolution 684 and related UN resolutions. The people of Amazonia thank Canada deeply for funding the Swiss-led process since 2019. Amazonians see Canada and host nation Switzerland amongst the frontline states seeking a lawful resolution of the sovereignty conflict. As a primary witness to the Swiss-led process, Canada observed the indifference by France to the process and La République du Cameroon's unilateral withdrawal from the Swiss-led process, and just 2 weeks later opted to convene a meeting involving some individuals of Southern Cameroon's extraction at the behest of the Prime Minister of La République du Cameroon. Canada's statement by the Honorable Melanie Joly, Minister of Foreign Affairs, issued on the 20th of January 2023, officially announces her shift in role from convener to facilitator or mediator of a peace process aimed at resolving the conflict between Amazonia and La République du Cameroon in the context of the ongoing genocide. Despite the U-turn by La République du Cameroon yesterday afternoon, we wish well to the Honorable Melanie Joly for a good effort despite our reservations to how the process began. We wish to reiterate our position that mediators in any peace process can neither be self-imposed nor self-appointed. They must be elected by the belligerents involved in the conflict. As of today, no broad-based consultation or worthy engagement has involved the institution of the interim government of the Federal Republic of Amazonia, which represents our liberation's critical mass and the aspirations of the overwhelming majority of Amazonians at the home front and in the diaspora. Canada, as one of the observers and sponsors of the Swiss-led process, knows the character of this conflict and the principal parties on both sides after more than 5 years of the conflict. Therefore, to initiate a peace process without due consultation and worthy engagement with one of the principles of this conflict is a recipe for failure because it contradicts the fundamentals of conflict resolution. It is a waste of time, financial and human resources aimed at executing the Machiavellian plan of the enemy La République du Cameroon, which seeks to distract our self-defenders in Ambazonia and continue acts of genocide, destruction of human settlements and private property. Some of those individuals and groups listed as parties claiming to represent the Ambazonian side in the ministry statement are little known individuals with very negligible followings and limited involvement in the Ambazonian cause, most of whom do not represent the aspirations of the overwhelming majority of Ambazonians. What they bring to the table are bogus titles and names of groups that are not recognized by the Ambazonian public. The mention of Amazonia Coalition Team Act, which was meant to serve as an umbrella organization as one of the parties, is a misnomer because the principal and initiator of Act, which is the interim government of the Federal Republic of Amazonia, is not a party to this initial process and did not endorse those claiming to be representing her in the Canada meetings. Any group of persons purported to represent the interim government in meetings with Canada prior to this statement by the Canadian Foreign Ministry are imposters and must not be taken seriously. When the principle of a conflict is not a party to a mediated process, trusting the process becomes an issue and the route to failure becomes inevitable. The interim government once more reiterates its position for a peace process to be meaningful. This was articulated in Canada when their role as convener of the Canada Gathering was made known, that both belligerent parties, principal parties of the conflict, not persons serving individual interests, the Federal Republic of Amazonia and La République du Cameroon, must be officially represented at every stage of the prospective peace process. The mediator should be elected and endorsed by both parties, not self appointed or self imposed by proclamation. Then an official public pronouncement should be made in order to earn the trust of the people, the stakeholders involved in the conflict, as well as international observers of the process. A mediator's role should be facilitating and not deciding or imposing on behalf of any of the parties involved. Inasmuch as the interim government appreciates Canada's intent to find a lasting peace to the ongoing conflict between Amazonia and La République du Cameroon, it is worth noting that the basic thresholds have not been reached for her to take up the role of mediator. It is in the interest of all to make sure that such a conflict building peace initiative does not face a firewall at its takeoff point. If not, this will come across as unserious, like a facade, creating something that gives the impression that something is being done when in reality nothing substantial is being done. Short live the revolution, long live the Amazonian people and the Federal Republic of Amazonia. Thank you, and over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mungwa. Thank you so much. And we'll begin to ask some questions that would definitely stir a lot of more conversation from you tonight. Now, Dr. Mungwa, in your statement, there's this part that got me so amazed, and I'll just try to pick up that point where you said that in any peace process, mediators can neither be self-imposed nor self-appointed. They must be elected by the belligerents involved in the conflict. And you went on to say, as of today, no broad-based consultation or worthy engagement has involved the institution of the interim government. Now, this is one part, and I'm wondering what is happening now. The institution involved, Canada involved, understands what is involved when it comes to the peace process. They understand the fundamental characteristics when it comes to conflicts. And of course, the principal parties on both sides must be consulted. But what is happening here? Should we say they ignored it due to probably lack of understanding, or is it because they do not want to go through the right process or do the right things?
Well, thank you for that question. I think it's very important. Once again, Happy New Year to the both of you. I'm happy to be back, and I'm also happy that a lot of Amazonians have begun to understand exactly the place of the interim government in this struggle for independence. It's a very, very important question, but that also shows the distortion in the whole process, all the way to the so-called Canadian Peace Plan, if I can put it that way. People do not know the genesis of what ended up in Canada. This process of trying to come to some sort of negotiation started all the way in Zimbabwe, through Nigeria to Ghana, and ended up in Canada. And this was not something that actually Canada started. It was actually people behind the scene who were imposters for La République du Cameroon, trying to create something that looked like a peace process, which of course, you realize that it is not. But before I even go further in this discussion, let me tell you one thing. France had warned Biya never to negotiate with Amazonia because they have no cards to play. Listen to this again. France had warned Biya never to negotiate with Amazonia because Biya or La République du Cameroon has no cards to play. So whatever they are trying to do now is just it's a stopgap measure. They just want to keep frustrating us to a point where we are going to say, oh, after all, let's forget about this independence struggle and let's come back and let's have peace. And that's why they've been putting emphasis on peace and not justice. So forget about whatever is happening in Canada. Wherever it's going to go, I can assure you that La République du Cameroon will abort it at the end. And let me give you some statistics. Let me give you a trend. La République du Cameroon met secretly with Sisiko Ayuktabe on 2 occasions. And they were trying to convince Sisiko Ayuktabe that, well, they are ready to negotiate with them. And on both occasions, Sisiko Ayuktabe actually set the conditions for negotiation. One of them, which was they have to liberate, of course, freedom from prison, free all prisoners, and then they can come to the table and start the negotiation. But what happened? Immediately after the second meeting in Volier, this same fellow called Emmanuel Sadi came out and stated openly that they have never negotiated, no backdoor negotiation has ever taken place between La République du Cameroon and Sisiko Ayuktabe. He killed the process. So this is the modus operandi of La République du Cameroon. Next comes the Swiss-led process. They were consulted, they approved the Swiss-led process, they came to the interim government and we accepted, and everything was in motion. And 3 years later, what happens? They came and did the same thing. They pulled out of the Swiss-led process. Now this is the third one, the Canadian so-called process. And what has happened again? They have pulled out of it. So it tells you the trend. La République has no intention whatsoever to negotiate with anybody. They want that at the end of the day, we shall all go back and say, okay, the special status that was given to you, that is the best deal in town. So I warn Amazonians, we are here for the long haul. There are only 2 ways that we have to counteract this. We have to use ground firepower and diplomacy. We should be pushing. If we cannot get a recognition immediately, we have to be pushing for sanctions to be levied against La République du Cameroon. So I see absolutely no interest going into details of the negotiations and trying to say, oh, who did what, or who said what, or whether Canada wants us to become another Canada, and so on and so forth. That is totally irrelevant, because La République du Cameroon is never going to come and sit on the table for us to negotiate, because they have no cards to play. And that's what France told Biya. This is the story, the long and short of it. Over to you.
All right, Star.
No, you could go ahead on you.
Okay. Dr. Mungwa, now you talked about the fact that France has told Biya not to negotiate. Now, if that is what it is, then why are people, Amazonians, what are they going out there to do? This is not the first time. The other time they had what we call a conference, what Dr. Sako called a monologue, What is it that they do not understand this, or they just want to go ahead? Of course, people are maybe hungry and then looking for several sources of income. Probably that is paying the bill. But then there is something that was working. That's ACT. I was trying to get that on before you ended your own speech. Team ACT. Now, that's Team Ambazonia. All right. What is happening with that? That's the Ambazonian coalition team. It's supposed to be working. It's supposed to help harness and organize Ambazonians who are interested in this struggle, right? Now, if is it that they are not aware that there is no form of negotiation going to happen because of what France is insisting, and then understand that it is time for everyone to come together? Or is it just because probably stomach infrastructure, they just want to get anything they can get from La Republic to Cameroon? Can you just help us out here?
Okay, let me give you some historical backup to act. When Funcha accepted that he was going to negotiate on the type of state with Ahijo, he didn't just go there with his KNDP party. He sat down, he brought representations from all political parties in Ambazonia or in southern Cameroon. So it wasn't just about him, it was about everybody involved, whether it was Nde Tumaza, whether it was EML Endele. All those who had different political positions were part of this big uh, 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 group, or political umbrella that went to talk to Ahijo. And it is in that spirit that President Sako said, let me form ACT. So it's not as if it's just me or the interim government going to negotiate. And in that act, we have to bring people of different political ideologies, but at least those who believe that ultimately we want independence for Amazonia. And that's how the act was created. Dr. Sako could have decided that I'm not going to create anything. I am going to go there alone. But being the sort of leader that he is, he recognized that some people may have differences, but at least those who believe that ultimately we want independence, these are the people who have to come together so we can put our energies together, so we can think and have a much stronger team when we sit in front of La République du Cameroun. But again, what happens? You have a few fellows who came there full of envy and full of self-aggrandizement. They felt that they could take away art and use it as private property. And that's exactly what is going on in this struggle. You have people who actually have no idea whatsoever how to run a revolution like this. They come in there because they want to cash in, or maybe they think they can benefit, have some personal benefits out of the whole thing. You saw Akwanga, he was going to Switzerland all the time, in occasions, even going with a girlfriend. And he doesn't know that the Swiss were aware of that. So people have been using this process to enrich themselves. Okay? The interim government have been to some of the meetings. And if you understand how strict even Dr. Sako is in terms of whatever has to be done to himself, then you realize that he is not there for any personal wealth. Even when I attended one of the meetings here with the Swiss negotiator, we didn't even accept food. We did not even accept lodging. We didn't even accept anything. We said, no, we only came here to make sure that we talk about Amazonia. And the gentleman was shocked. We didn't come there for any personal wealth. We turned down every offer that they gave us. We knew that they were paying under the ticket of Canada, but that did not matter to us. We came there, we made sure that we had a meeting for 4 hours, and we left. And we paid our own transport, we paid for our own feeding, and we left the gentleman. And that's how important we consider this this struggle, because we understand what people are going through at the home front. So this should be this. What has happened recently, I hope it's an eye opener to all Amazonians, to see exactly how far some Amazonians can go just to get an extra 1,000 francs, or to get an extra free lodging, an extra pocket change, just not because they feel for the people of Amazonia. And that is why we are very strict, and we've made sure that Amazonians understand. There are 3 words that we can never use. The words are can't, The interim government cannot say we cannot do this. Impossible. We cannot say something is impossible. And finally, hope. The interim government cannot hope for independence. America did not hope for independence. America did not hope to go to the moon. No country hopes to be independent. Zimbabwe did not hope to be independent. South Africa did not hope to be independent. So when you hear people saying that, oh, we hope this negotiation will bring peace, these are people who have been sold to La République du Cameroon. And let Amazonians know that the words that people say actually state volumes about what they think. We shall never say hope. We want to take Amazonia to sovereignty, and we are not hoping to do that. Let those who are hoping go to La République du Cameroon and settle there for emergence 2035. That is their hope, not ours. Over to you.
All right, Dr. Martin Mungwa, you talked about, this is very striking, the fact why you said France had warned Biya never to negotiate with Amazonia. And that being said, if La République du Cameroon is never going to come to the negotiation table because of this, and all they would obviously continue doing is bringing this delaying tactics like the conference going on in Canada, what is the way forward for Amazonians, since it's only the delaying tactics that has ever come to play? Even La République du Cameroon stated that they were not represented there. So what is the way forward? Would a negotiation ever work?
2 words. I said diplomacy and firepower. Let me tell you, we are succeeding on firepower. I don't see how they will say they will never negotiate with us, and yet we know what is happening at the home front in terms of firepower. We have the firepower, and there's no way they can send their thugs to come and harass us. So an increase in firepower on the ground and an increase in diplomacy. And we're also making breakaways in diplomacy. You all know now that internationally, people call us Amazonia, not Northwest and Southwest, not whatever, West Cameroon, whatever. Now they have actually understood that we are called Amazonia, and we are going to pursue that path. It's not impossible. La République du Cameroon is not God. And that's one thing they should know. You can go back and ask Hitler. Hitler wanted to rule the world, but God said no. And what happened? The rest is history. If La République du Cameroon thinks that they can stall the process, they're mistaken, because their economy is going down the drain. And I see how they're going to sustain themselves and then sustain Amazonia under their control. That's a mathematical equation I don't think they can resolve. Over to you.
Winnings already. Now let's look at diplomacy. Now this is 2023, right? It's a new year, and of course, a lot of Ambazonians in the home front and even in the diaspora would be wanting to know the other stages that can, that things can be done differently this year. Now, last year we were all focused in the Swiss-led process that, of course, Cameroon pulled out of. Now, this year, is there any country or is there any other international recognition that we are moving on with? Because I mean, you've mentioned two, should we say, two characteristics that we are holding on to now, which is firepower and diplomacy. So now we know we're already winning with the firepower. Now diplomacy. In what areas? Specific areas. We had Swiss-led process in 2022, 2023. What are we looking on to, and what can we work towards?
Well, I don't want to exceed my bounds. I talked to the foreign secretary yesterday, and he's actually looking forward to coming on ABC. I was hoping that I was going to actually hold this presentation today with him, but it turned out not to be the case. So I will refer that to Dr. Ellard, who is our foreign secretary, and he'll be able to give specific details. As a communication secretary, I know a lot is happening on the diplomatic front, but if you want specific details, he should be able to talk about them. However, I also want to invite all Amazonians next Tuesday, and you all know that the head of state will have a press conference with international journalists on I think Tuesday, the 31st of January, 2023. So I would hope that some of those questions which are external to my department will be answered during those sessions. And I also want to inform Amazonians that on the following Thursday, the president will be having a town hall. Again, that will be an occasion for him to elaborate on some of the strategies, so at least look backwards and see some of the successes we've had. So next week is actually full of action, and I urge Amazonians not to miss this occasion, to be to see what, to listen to the president, to give us more about what is going on in the diplomatic and the national issues. So that's what I have for you. I don't think I am mandated to talk about specific foreign action to the Amazonian people. So I will leave it at that. But I can assure you that we are becoming stronger and stronger. And I'm not just saying for the sake of it, because I've received a lot of call from the home front. I've actually read a lot of messages sent from the home front after this debacle. And I think we have been able to establish a trend that the interim government saw a long time ago. And we were telling Amazonians, unfortunately, there were some foolhardy leaders who thought that they knew how to manipulate, and they can go and hide and talk with representatives or proxies of Mr. Biya, thinking that they can take the process from the interim government. Now they've fallen flat on their face. I mean, some of them, if you listen to what they say, take some fellow like Capo Daniel. I mean, it's so silly what he was actually sending out messages of congratulations to Mr. Biya. Just, 24 hours later, they slammed the door at their face. I just wonder how they're thinking now. But as I said earlier, these people they have reptilian instincts. They will turn back and they will start speaking as if nothing ever happened. But I just want Amazonians to take note of the character and the attitude of these people. And when they come back to you, telling you that you should stand, in fact, they actually mean you should run, because these are not people you should ever trust them. I think that trust factor has been settled as far as the interim government is concerned. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mungwa. Now, the next question I have, I really hope that you would not direct it to, the Foreign Affairs Department. But then let me ask, and then if you direct it, then I will know that would have to have Dr. Elad in the studio, just like you've advised. Now, Dr. Mungwa, now let's look at the fact that Canada is, bringing up ideas about a mediation process. They have some things on the table. Will the interim government consider them as people who might want to, further the mediation through to probably France, that has even rejected or does not even want anything about this mediation process to even come into Cameroon? Do you think that the interim government can partner with Canada, since they are the ones coming towards with this kind of idea right about now? Is it a possibility?
If Canada follows the directives of a mediator, which will be broad-based, making sure that we have an agenda, making sure that it incorporates Senate Resolution 684 and everything that we think is important for us to present our case as an independent nation, why not? I can't say no. But it's up to Canada if they think they're going to be a mediator. Remember that the Swiss, that's exactly what they did. They requested La République du Cameroon if they want to be a mediator. La République du Cameroon accepted. They asked us, and they respected us. They treated us as equal partners. They didn't just say, as I mentioned in one of my write-ups, it's like you are in a car. The driver is Canada. They're already, set up the engine. They're rolling. They're taking off, and they open the door. So, oh, you jump. There's some people in there already. Jump. Interim government, jump. If you have any cargo, go on top of the car, tie it. We are going. You don't even know where they are going. Are you going to jump into that car? That's what Canada is doing. They say anybody can jump. Come in. We accept you. On what basis? What are we talking about? It looks silly, to be honest with you. If you really want to negotiate, if you are going to be the mediator, we have to sit down. We have to know the agenda. We have to know what we'll be discussing about. We have to incorporate all our concerns. We are representing Ambazonia. We are not representing ourselves. Dr. Sako is not going there to represent Dr. Sako, not even Dr. Sako family, not even Bakure people. He is not going there to represent Bakure people. He is going to represent everybody, including those who are in Bui, those who are in Awin, those who are in Batubo, even in Bambalang. That's what Dr. Sako is going to represent. He's not going there to represent Bakure people. And let people understand this. It is not an ethnic issue. And that's what the interim government is composed of, people from all the nooks and crannies of Amazonia. If I'm in that meeting, I'm not there to represent Gogitunja. I'm not there to be fighting just for Gogitunja. It is a mandate for the entire Amazonia. We have to understand this. And if Canada takes that role, making sure that Senate Resolution 684 is a core, is integral to that negotiation process. Once again, we thank the American government for making that possible, because this is the most powerful document after our independence in the 60s. And there's no way we can move forward without incorporating the articles in Senate Resolution 684. And that should be known. I used to think that Canadians are Americans. So I thought if there is Senate Resolution 684, the Canadians will automatically incorporate it. But now it doesn't seem to be the case. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mungwa. All right, this evening we reported about Dr. Joachim Ari, and he thinks that it's a good opportunity for, Canada to come to this. I'm sure that most of them did not understand, what the intricacies were and what the back and forth movements were as well. So I do not know if you want to throw more emphasis again, just to, re-emphasize and highlight the importance of, this particular discussion this evening, because of course we had a fan's testimony and he had said that they get undiluted real report from Undaunted ABC Amber TV. And when we go through some of our reports, we get that so many Ambazonians do not really understand what's on the table. They just pick news from the air and pick from whoever they want to pick from. Now, from Dr. Joachim Ari, when he was asked about the Canadians, the Canadian government's involvement, and he said he thinks it's a good idea for both parties to negotiate, and he thinks it's even better for Ambazonians. What do you have to say about that? Because he is, of course, someone who should have been more informed. But this is where he stands, and I'm sure that there are so many other Ambazonians who may as well be thinking that it's the Ambazonian, the interim government led by Dr. Sako, that do not want to negotiate with Canada. They do not understand the underlying intricacies and what has been happening. So we might just want you, as the interim government spokesperson, to throw more light in this particular issue as we summarize this evening's report.
Okay, when I heard that Canada already dismisses secession as part of the equation, it means that Canada is against Senate Resolution 684. The Canadians are against the Americans as far as the independence of Ambazonia is concerned. That is troubling. And that's what I picked up from that statement, that Canada is against the United States, is against the U.S. Senate. They don't want the position of the U.S. Senate. That is what I heard. I don't know why Canada thought they were going to, take such a position. And when I listened to that gentleman, he brought up three things. He said, in the wonderful system that is created by Canada, the state or the federal government is in charge of natural resources, the military, and foreign affairs. Is this not what La Republique is using to kill us? They have taken hold of our natural resources. They have the military. They are attacking us, and we will go back in a negotiation and endorse the same mechanisms that they have taken to impoverish our people. Does this guy even think at all? And we are going to accept? It does not make sense. There is no way that we are going to let our people be attacked by the army of a country that you claim to be part of. That is not going to happen. And I want Amazonians to understand this. If you want to negotiate such that the Betty junta, they're in charge of natural resources, they're in charge of the military, you might well be walking around with your rope to hang yourself wherever you go. It is not the interim government to endorse that. We will not. We must have the freedom to go through Senate Resolution 684. That is our freedom ticket. Thank you. Over to you.
Dr. Martin Mungwa, tonight for me was more of learning and listening to the wisdoms from you. Well, thank you so much for expatiating on our clarities. And to the viewers and listeners, we have to apologize that tonight you didn't get your chance to, put in your call to the Secretary of State for Communications and IT for your questions and your contributions. Unfortunately, tonight is not one of those nights. But definitely, hopefully on Tuesday, we'll get that slot over to you. And Dr. Martin Mungwa, except there's any other, piece of advice to Ambazonians out there, would like you to give your last words.
Yeah, thank you. Dear Ambazonians, after listening to La Republique of Cameroon condemn the so-called the peace negotiation through Canada, I think we now have our work cut out for us. You now understand that all that is required for us to have independence is firepower and diplomacy. I want to remind you that Dr. Sako is on both fronts, and he's working extremely hard to make sure that diplomatically our voice is heard, and as well as making sure that we have the weapons, we have the materials that we need in order to ensure self-defense. So I'm here to let you know this is a new year and we're getting closer to the end of the struggle. Thank you for watching, and I see you again next week. Goodbye.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Martin Mungwa. And with that, we'll call it a wrap for tonight's State of Liberation Movement with our amazing Secretary of State for Communications and IT, Dr. Martin Mungwa, F.Asce Fellow of the American Civil Engineers.
All right, and let's take sports. Now, Everton has sacked manager Frank Lampard after Saturday's 2-0 defeat by West Ham left them 19th in the Premier League and without a win in 10 matches in all competition. Well, of course, and as usual, Gab Ellison has more to this report.
Latest world sports. Football. Frank Lampard sacked by Everton after West Ham defeat leaves club 19th in table. Everton has sacked manager Frank Lampard after Saturday's 2-0 defeat by West Ham left them 19th in the Premier League and without a win in 10 matches in all competitions. Lampard's dismissal follows Everton owner Farhad Moshiri attending his first match since October 2021 as the Toffees succumbed to defeat at the London Stadium, their third consecutive defeat in the league. The former Chelsea boss arrived at Goodison Park in January 2022, and although he helped the club avoid the drop last season, he leaves Everton with 15 points from 20 games and 3 wins this term, the worst victory record in the division. Everton are 19th in the table, with only Southampton below them on goal difference. Everton fans protested against the club's hierarchy as Jared Bowen's double condemned their team to defeat, but the board have instead responded by dismissing Lampard. Speaking to Sky Sports News after that defeat, Moshiri said, "It's not my decision." When asked if Lampard's time was up, while the head coach insisted he remain focused on the challenge at hand in his final post-match interview. "It's my job to work and focus and keep my head down," Lampard said. "I've got absolute confidence in how I want to coach. And if there are difficult conditions at the minute, for a lot of different reasons that I'm very aware of, then that's it. I just have to do my job, and it's not for me to make too many diversions around it rather than talk about what I can affect, and that's the players trying to get the results right." League matches. Bundesliga. Matchday 17 of the German Bundesliga continues on Wednesday with the following games scheduled to take place. Mainz will battle things out with Borussia Dortmund in the first game of the day. Augsburg will exchange lessons with Borussia Mönchengladbach, Werder Bremen will lock horns with Union Berlin. Bayer Leverkusen will take on Bochum, while Freiburg will be playing host to Frankfurt. Australian Open 2023 results. Elena Rybakina beats Jelena Ostapenko to reach semi-finals. Wimbledon champion Elena Rybakina swept past Jelena Ostapenko to reach her first Australian Open semi-final. Rybakina fired 11 aces and 24 winners as she claimed a dominant 6-2, 6-4 victory over Latvia's Ostapenko. The Kazakh wrapped up victory in 1 hour and 19 minutes following a lengthy rain delay on Rod Laver Arena. Rybakina, seeded 22nd, will face either American world number 3 Jessica Pegula or two-time champion Victoria Azarenka for a place in the final. "I'm super happy to be in the semi-finals for the first time," said Rybakina, the youngest player left in the women's draw. "Of course, I was nervous, especially in the last game. I'm super happy I managed the emotions and I played really well today." Despite earning the most prestigious title of her career with her surprise success at Wimbledon, Rybakina dropped to 25th in the world, where she remains, because ranking points were not awarded at the grass court major. She subsequently spoke about not feeling like a Grand Slam champion and began her Melbourne campaign on court 13 rather than a show court. Restored to the main stage at Melbourne Park, she followed up her stunning win over top seed Iga Swiatek with another devastating display against 2017 French Open winner Ostapenko. "I think I got all the experience at Wimbledon and it's helping me now this time here in Australia. I know what to expect," Rybakina said. "I'm feeling good on the court and really enjoying every match I'm playing here." In a meeting between two of the three major champions still standing among the last 8, Rybakina made a confident start as she broke 17 seed Ostapenko's serve in the opening game. She set up another opportunity in Game 5 with her powerful shot-making double break lead and ultimately served out the set under the roof. Ostapenko threatened to fight back with a break at the start of set 2, but Rybakina swiftly extinguished those hopes, recording successive breaks in reply to bring her second major semi-final into focus. She went on to seal the match in fitting fashion, sending down a final ace to extend her tournament-leading tally to 35. Gab Ellison reporting from Daunted, ABC Amber News.
All right, and with that sports report, this is where we'll come to the end of Undaunted tonight.
Well, until Thursday, we'll leave you with ABC Amber TV images. Good night and God bless you.